Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted on Monday, September 22nd, 2025, the committee shall resume its study of the use of offshore tax havens. I would like to welcome both our witnesses today. You will have 5 minutes for your opening remarks, after which we will open the floor to questions. Today we have from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Chad Babin, Assistant Staff Sergeant for the Federal Police Criminal Operations Financial Crime, and Michael Sagbini, Chief Superintendent, Director General, Federal Police Criminal Operations for the Financial Crimes. So I'll give either one of you or both of you 5 minutes for your opening statement.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and honourable members of the committee. My name is Chief Superintendent Michael Sagbini. I'm the Director General for Financial Crime with the Federal Policing Criminal Operations at the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the RCMP. I'm also joined with Acting Staff Sergeant Chad Babin, who's a subject matter expert in financial crime within our Federal Policing Criminal Operations. I am honored to speak to you all today from the traditional territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. I'll begin with a brief description of the RCMP's role. Financial crime is a priority for the RCMP and is part of its mandate to protect Canada's economic integrity. We work closely with the Canada Revenue Agency, the CRA, which is the lead department responsible for investigating tax evasion related to offshore tax havens. As you know, the CRA has its own investigative capacity through its Criminal Investigations Directorate and is well positioned to investigate tax evasion cases in close collaboration with law enforcement agencies like the RCMP. The RCMP plays an important support role on this issue. We are not a primary recipient of tax information, but may become involved in investigations, especially when they intersect with other criminal activities such as money laundering, fraud, and corruption. In these cases, the RCMP collaborates with the CRA, the Financial Transaction and Reports Analysis Centre of Canada, better known as FINTRAC, and international partners to investigate and prosecute individuals or entities that use tax havens to hide illicit funds. We know that tax evasion and other tax crimes have serious consequences as they lower government revenue and undermine public trust in Canada's tax system. Tax-related crimes are also part of complex schemes that allow criminals to benefit from the proceeds of their crimes and use those funds to further their criminal activities. Proceeds from illegal activity are routinely wired through tax haven jurisdictions, whose opaque financial structures, such as offshore banks, shell companies, trusts, law firms, decouple illicit wealth from its original owner. In the Government of Canada's 2025 National Risk Assessment of Money Laundering and Terrorist Financing, tax evasion is listed as a high money laundering threat to the Canadian economy. Unfortunately, we know that sophisticated organized criminal groups use complex money laundering networks to leverage the global financial system to hide income and assets. This often includes using offshore locations and companies to hide and launder large amounts of money. Tackling this through a multi-agency and law enforcement approach can be effective. For example, you may be familiar with Project Collecteur, a joint investigation between the CRA's Criminal Investigations Directorate and the RCMP. This investigation uncovered a large professional money laundering network spanning several countries and leveraging money service businesses and informal value transfer systems. Several people were charged and convicted as a result of this investigation, including for tax evasion and related crimes. Many factors can impact law enforcement's ability to investigate tax evasion occurring in a tax haven. As with other kinds of financial crime, tax crime methods continue to evolve. This is particularly the case with the increasing use of digital currency, which is still unregulated in certain jurisdictions and is very hard to trace. As well, the speed that digital currency moves can sometimes outpace law enforcement and other agencies' efforts. As well, transnational crime proposes jurisdictional challenges for law enforcement. Law enforcement are dependent on international partners delivering timely results. Offshore jurisdictions can sometimes delay or limit the provision of information. That said, in recent years, progress has been made in Canada and in other countries to address gaps that allow for criminals to use tax havens for their benefit. For example, new laws and regulatory requirements in Canada around beneficial ownership will assist in organized crime and money laundering investigations by
Mr.
identifying the
Sagbini,
real individuals.
Thank you. That's 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm ready to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. We'll move into our first round for 6 minutes, starting with Ms. Kabina.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for your remarks, Mr. Sabini. You brought me back to the days of when I was working in the financial sector, and we know, I think you hit the nail on the head in that these criminals are highly sophisticated. They're very fast. They adapt, and these schemes are highly complex, and they change all the time. And oftentimes, when you take a step back, you think, well, how is the law and the rules ever going to keep up with them, right? Because they're around the world, but at the same time, for the average Canadian who is working incredibly hard and abiding by the rules and paying the taxes, it can be also extremely frustrating to know that not only is the tax code so complicated that only the highly sophisticated, the people that are extremely wealthy to be, and the ones that are able to afford sophisticated lawyers and accountants will be able to find the loopholes and not pay taxes, and that's frustrating to the average Canadian. But my question to you is, what do you see as the biggest risk right now in terms of money laundering, tax evasion, and financial crime? Because it happens all day, every day, and how do we as a country keep up with that?
Thank you for your question, and through you, Mr. Chair. It's very true what you're saying. The organized crime elements are using very sophisticated methods in sheltering their money. They're using cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrencies are very difficult. They're very difficult to trace in some instances. They're using different types of wallets that are not the typical ones that we would know that are above ground. So it becomes very difficult to have to trace it, and layering of the companies. And sometimes we have lawyers that are named in these companies, and then you've got lawyer clients, solicitor privilege, which also becomes an issue. Some of these lawyers are willingly doing it, some unknowingly doing it. So it becomes a very difficult task from a law enforcement perspective. We are looking at it from the crime. We're not looking at the tax evasion side of the house. That's a CRA mandate. We're looking at the predicate offenses, the drug trafficking that's leading to the money laundering, the frauds, the sophisticated frauds, the large frauds that are the predicate offense that are allowing them to move large funds, across.
What is the biggest risk? Like, what should we as parliamentarians focus on? Because this, like I said, it happens all day.
Yeah.
Every single day.
Yeah.
So what is the best way to target
So maybe I'll pass the question over to Chad. He's in some of the working groups, so he may be able to give you a more detailed answer there.
Yes, thank you. One of the larger risks or things that we have to deal with is beneficial ownership. It is a hot button topic for us. Who actually controls or owns certain trusts or corporations? Certain low tax jurisdictions have allow complex setup of trusts or corporate registries, and finding out who the actual owner of those is a challenge for the police, especially when dealing with our international partners in certain jurisdictions.
Yeah. And do you have a sense of the volume of investigations? Like, how many investigations would you typically do in a year?
I do not have that number with me, but I would be happy to provide that after.
Okay. And out of the investigations, just roughly speaking, maybe percentage-wise, how many would be actually convicted?
That I don't know as well. That would, PPSC would, our Crown Counsel, or the courts keep track of that number.
Okay. And I suppose on average, how long would an investigation take?
That's a good question. So some can be rather quick, and some can be quite lengthy, years. Even I'll call it a simple financial crime investigation, is many months. It's not a week or two thing. But yes, several years in most cases, leading up to the charges to go to trial.
Thank you. And how big of a problem do you think is the misuse of offshore tax havens and tax evasion when it comes to financial crime and its impact on Canada's economy and tax system?
Well, the numbers, I don't know exactly how much is in tax havens. I mean, it does have a large impact. I mean, those are, that's revenue that, we don't see or is provided to the government. As we alluded to earlier, the tax evasion side of the house is a CRA mandate where we're looking at the actual crime that's being committed for the money to be procured for them to send it overseas. So we do work in collaboration with CRA, but from a tax evasion perspective, that's totally on their mandate.
Last question, but very quick. How do you ensure the so-called bad actors in our society are held accountable for their financial crimes?
Just a quick answer, please.
I'm sorry?
Quick answer.
Please.
Quick answer, yeah. I mean, we're working very diligently. We're trying to, especially with fraud, where, as you mentioned, law-abiding Canadian citizens are being defrauded, et cetera. We are working very hard to hold everybody that is committing these crimes accountable to the highest standard possible. Thank you.
That's around. Next, we have Mr. Sawatsky and Mr. Littell.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for coming in today and also for all of the important work that you do. The Canada Financial Crimes Agency came out in Budget 2025. I was wondering if you could perhaps elaborate on how the RCMP is going to align its financial crime expertise with this new agency so that Canada has a modernized capacity to investigate offshore tax evasion?
Yeah, so obviously it's in its infancy stages, and we're not sure exactly how the agency is going to look. We do know that we'll be part of it. We do have, the expertise in fighting crime when it comes to financial crime. We will be working in close collaboration with this new agency, however it's going to look, and we will provide whatever support we need to provide in order to make this an effective and an efficient agency.
Are there any recommendations you'd have on how to make this most effective?
It's hard to come up with exact recommendations. I just think that anytime you work with different agencies where we can collaborate, where we can share expertise, it's beneficial. I wouldn't say like a joint, kind of like in a joint task force type unit. I think it's very important where we bring all our partners in and be able to collaborate together and work. And I think that would be an ideal situation where we share our expertise and share our resources and share best practices.
Thank you very much. I'll pass the rest of the time to Mr. Leitao.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bonjour, messieurs. Merci d'être là.
Hello, gentlemen, and thank you for having joined us. Mr. Babin, you spoke at the outset of an issue that I, too, think is highly important in this discussion. Who is the beneficial owner? Who is the actual owner of any company, business that's often hidden behind a number of shell companies? So in this context, And I don't want to put you in a delicate situation. Of course, if you're unable to answer my question, of course, don't answer it. But, for example, is there any information sharing with colleagues from other jurisdictions, other countries?
Thank you for the question through the chair. Yes, we do share information with our foreign counterparts, informally and formally. Being police in early stages of investigations, informal or what we call police-to-police information sharing is very valuable when it comes to finding beneficial owners, depending on the jurisdiction we're working with. There are several networks that we're members of. I can highlight perhaps something called the ARN, the Asset Recovery Interagency Network, and it allows us to reach out to several, over 100 jurisdictions that we work with, and they can do police-to-police database checks on our behalf in their foreign jurisdiction and return that information to us so that we can begin investigating any connections to Canada or nexus to Canada from that jurisdiction, some of which are in these so-called tax havens, and they're quite cooperative.
Okay, thank you. I think you also mentioned, or one of you mentioned, and rightly so, that these days, of course, digital currencies are quite a challenge for law enforcement authorities because it makes it so easy to move money around and move money around anonymously. A lot of that is obviously unregulated. And different countries are beginning to look at ways to perhaps regulate that. In Canada, we know that the government of Canada and the Bank of Canada are looking at real-time rails, so to have a more efficient digital type currency, but that would be entirely regulated. If we are to move in that direction of having governments and central banks participate actively in kind of regulating and developing the digital currency world, what would be your recommendations? Since you've seen this world from up close, what would you say would be the main issues that you would like future regulators to address?
I mean, that's a tough one. I think we'd have to really delve into what it could look like. I mean, anytime you have some sort of regulation, anytime you have to de-anonymize yourself, where you have to put your name to an account, I mean, it makes life easier. But for how this could look like, that's something that, we could go back and see based on what we've seen in the past and what the MOUs and, the MOs of what people do, how do we best, come up with some best practices? I think that's something we could potentially go back at some point when we're ready for that and give some recommendations from a law enforcement perspective to say, hey, if we did ABC in this context, it would help us. Yeah, we'd be more than happy to be able to provide that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's around. Next, Mr. Garon for 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, gentlemen, for being here today. I would like to get back to the KPMG issue. That's going back to 2020-21. Back then, the company, it was thought that it had developed tax evasion schemes, and a very aggressive one, that there were criminal accusations laid in the United States. In Canada, we learned that evading the CRA rulings and rules, it was shown later in court document that there had been a secret agreement between the CRA and KPMG. And when we brought in the Minister of Revenue to tell us whether she should have investigated this, she said she came and told us, here, if you're unhappy with this, go and become a police officer. Would I become a good police officer? I don't think so. I don't need your comment on that. But do you think that if the Minister of Revenue were to use her investigation powers that she has under legislation, would this make it easier for you to carry out your work? Moreover, do you feel that even though criminal legislation differs from jurisdiction to another, one to another, when there's a criminal case underway in the United States, and at the same time you've got some secret agreement that's set in Canada, doesn't this create difficulties in your investigations?
Through you, Mr. Chair. To comment on CRA's investigative postures and how they do things, well, we don't know how that all played out. They will do the tax evasion side, as we mentioned in our opening and our mandate. We do go after the criminality side and not necessarily the tax evasion, but we do work close with CRA hand in hand in dealing with, when they do a tax evasion investigation and they do see criminality, they will refer it back to us, and we will work closely together on that.
Mais si vous permettez, quand les
But with your
États-Unis...
permission, when the United States, lays criminal charges, and here in Canada there's a secret agreement that's underway, which is really not in compliance with the CRA's rulings, and the minister is not using her investigation powers, wouldn't that be something that interferes with your criminal investigation?
In this specific case, I don't know the specifics of the comments. CRA does their independent investigation, and if they do find that there is criminality in what they've uncovered within their investigation, then they will hand it over to the RCMP, and we will work hand in hand with them on whatever investigation.
Donc, j'en comprends que si la RC a de
All right, I
l'information...
understand from that if the CRA has information to the effect that there might be criminal behavior, but that for some reason decides not to send the file over to you, you can't investigate.
Well, we can, if we see that there's criminality that's part of the tax evasion, then yes, we will investigate in parallel to what the CRA will also investigate.
Tout en ayant besoin de l'information que la RC...
But you would need the information that the CRA would be in a position to provide you with, yes?
I can't force CRA to give us information if it doesn't meet under their mandate, or maybe they received it from a partner that they can't share with us. So there's different situations that may preclude them from being able to share. I can't speak specific to this case, but it's possible that they couldn't share for whatever reason. How they obtained it, I'm not quite sure, so I can't really speak to that specific topic.
Merci. J'aimerais revenir sur la
Thank
question...
you. I'd now like to get back to stablecoins, to virtual currency, to work using blockchain technology. We understand that the government has stated that it intends to issue a official stablecoin. People use it because SWIFT, IBAN, and so on. There are a number of bottlenecks there, difficult to send money internationally. So people have turned to stablecoin. My impression is that the regulations the Bank of Canada will apply will be to ensure that stablecoin is indeed backed by Canadian dollars and that their arrival will not have a negative effect on the Canadian financial system. Now, if we normalize the use of these currencies, even internationally, stabilize them somehow, would this be an acceptance, really, an approval of a financial tool that makes it easy, of course, to transfer money, but that also makes transfers that camouflage proceeds of crime and fraud more safe? Are we not normalizing a criminal situation?
The use of cryptocurrency itself is obviously it's not illegal. You can go buy a vehicle using a Bitcoin, right? It all depends on how you've obtained, did you sell narcotics to make your 100 million to put it into cryptocurrency to move it? That's the issue. It's not necessarily the issue of having a stable coin versus an unstable coin. It's more of us being able to trace the illegal funds that are making it
Donc,
through.
avec les 15 secondes qui me restent, donc
So
le
with
fait...
15 seconds I have left, having a stable coin, an official one, would not necessarily make your work easier or worse.
Well, I mean, it's very situational dependent. It doesn't mean if we have an unstable or it's irrelevant if it's stable, unstable. Like we're looking at, from a law enforcement perspective, we're looking at the crime that's being committed for that to go into cryptocurrency, whatever you want to call it. So the powers that decide on how you want, stable or unstable, really at the end of the day, from a law enforcement perspective, we're looking at the criminality that goes behind how they made the money and how they're moving it.
Thank
so
you.
It's just a tool of
Thank
moving
you.
it.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Mr. Lefebvre for 5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for being here with us today. You said, and you brought it up just recently, that methods have become more and more sophisticated. Cryptocurrency is a new reality, pretty new at least. And you've mentioned tracing where the cryptocurrency came from or what it is a proceed of. So how could we, as lawmakers, elected officials, help you with new regulations that could make your work easier? How can we be your partner in improving your work?
It's on to Acting Staff Sergeant Chad, who may have some ideas based on some of the groups that he's working with.
Yes, thank you for the question, and through Chair. Any legislative changes to improve access to banking transactions, including cryptocurrency transactions, are always being looked at by us and through our Government of Canada partners. We also work collaboratively with many of our Government of Canada partners on disruption efforts, especially around movement of funds. So should we not be able to necessarily criminally investigate something, we are looking at how to leverage different powers of different Government of Canada departments to mitigate criminality, prevent criminality, and basically make criminal activity in Canada difficult so that people will either cease or move on. Also increased tracing or analytic tools are always heavily leveraged by police. Cryptocurrency is traceable, and we do trace it. And we use different technologies for that, including exploring AI options to help us make networks behind that.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. In a 6th of November press release, you mentioned that only 5 to 6% of fraud incidents and laundering criminality in Canada are brought to your attention. You have a new international system allowing people to report on this. Could you tell us a bit more about this new program?
That's something we can go back on. I want to give you more of a fulsome answer to that. So if we can come back with a written response on that with the international organization, can you just maybe give me more specifics as to which group you're referring to?
Ben, écoutez, on l'avait ici.
Well, listen, we had it here in the 6th of November press release, the new International Cybersecurity and Fraud Information or Informant Program. This is something that you issued. So could you just give us a quick overview of the new system that you helped set up?
Question. So we do through the Cyber Center. We do have if you want to call it like an intake where people can report their frauds and anything that they've encountered. As we know, there's multiple frauds that are happening from a bank sending you or an alleged bank sending you a message to romance scams. There's a lot of frauds that are happening that it allows a one-stop, if you want to call it a one-stop shop for the Cyber Center to receive all these frauds, and it gets dispersed, depends if it should go to a police of jurisdiction. If it happened, let's say, in the city of Montreal, we'll work with the Montreal police, or wherever the jurisdiction is of that crime, we will work with whatever police of jurisdiction to fan out those complaints and allow the police to deal with all those specific complaints. In terms of statistics, I don't have those statistics available, but all that I understand is it's working well, and it, like I said, having one point of contact for the general public to know where to go is a very effective and efficient tool.
Merci beaucoup. On a eu une
Thank you
affirmation.
very much. We were told that tax havens constitute a method to ensure that to get the taxes paid here in Canada. So what do you think of that, that it's a method to get the taxes that are paid here in Canada?
That I can't comment on. That's a more of a CRA question in terms of the offshore money and tax havens. Like I said, we deal with the criminality that gets the money that gets sent out. But in terms of tax evasion and tax havens, that's more of a CRA question.
Thank you.
Thank
you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. McDonald for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses. In our budget 2025, we introduced a national anti-fraud strategy. And in 2024 alone, we've seen Canadians lose $643 million to fraud. So that was a 300% increase since 2020, with only a small fraction of those scams been reported for investigation. So from the RCMP's perspective, what factors are driving this rapid rise in fraud, particularly the scams that are targeting seniors, and how is your policing adapting to the investigations of this higher technology fraud?
Yeah, so thank you for the question, and through you, Mr. Chair. The issue with these frauds is they're becoming more sophisticated, they're becoming more obfuscated, and in a lot of times it's happening in countries that we don't have relationships with Canadian government, law enforcement, so it makes it extremely difficult. Some of these countries, there's rampant corruption, so if we do deal with the local police, there's nothing's going to come of it. Some instances there potentially the government or police are involved, so it makes it extremely difficult. There's also an education piece, I think, that we need to really push to our seniors, to even our young folks who are on cell phones, and they're moving so fast and they're just clicking and they're not even realizing what they're clicking. Next thing you know, they're in some sort of scam, or now someone's got access to their phone or to their bank account information. So I think education is a big piece for us. But these are really long, drawn out, in some cases they're using, different email servers to obfuscate where they come from. Is it in a country we can't deal with again? So it's sophisticated. The ones that we do find, we are very serious in investigating them, obviously, and prosecuting them. And then that's another thing, is the prosecution side. And when you have something that's so sophisticated, it becomes a very complex case for the Crown, and it gets drawn out. It's a long. With disclosures and dealing with other countries and what they can share and what they can't share. So it becomes a very complicated affair.
So your answer kind of leads me into another topic, and it may be varying a little bit from tax avoidance, but I've had interactions with constituents very concerned with sextortion, and the online harms bill was introduced last year, but it didn't pass, and now we're going to be introducing new legislation. Would you comment on, the ability to prosecute these offenders who may be based in a foreign country like Nigeria, for instance, in the situation I'm referring to? Where do we put the onus? Does it have to go on the platform providers? And I'm talking about youth or, teenage children.
I think there's a role to play. I think everyone has a bit of a role to play there. I think service providers, I think there's a role there to play as well. But you're absolutely right. It would be difficult in dealing with some of the countries that we do see, and these criminals are using those countries because they know it makes it difficult for law enforcement to deal with that country because there is the corruption and the lack of relations between the two countries. We have liaison officers that are around the world in different countries that, we will have a director in an area that's responsible for 5, 6, 7 countries. We continually go into those countries to build our relationships. But it's definitely a work in progress in terms of building those relationships and the willingness of that host country to actually work with us, because I think there's a lot of corruption that's happening, and it's in their best interest to keep it going.
So finally, getting back to money laundering, you mentioned in your opening statement that you work cooperatively with CRA, FinTrack, other organizations, provincial regulators, obviously, to investigate these complex financial crimes. What improvements would you recommend legislatively to members of Parliament to improve the ability to investigate?
Quick answer, please.
Sorry?
Quick answer.
Okay, I'll let Chad answer that one.
Quickly, increased access to tax records would be faster access to tax records would be a big help.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Garon for 2.5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Liberal colleagues mentioned, the government mentioned in its recent budget a little earlier this year, they published this strategy to combat fraud, a new infrastructure being created to better counter fraud. The Minister of Finance announced that. So we were not so sure this would work because we have the impression that this is just shifting the names of administrative structures that already exist, but without new financing. So when it comes to combating fraud, criminal crime, if we compare the jurisdictions in which you work or that you know of, are we one of the countries that provides a good deal of resources, sufficient resources, funding to police officers and compliance agencies, or do you think we should invest a good deal more to give you better tools, especially given that your work is becoming more and more complex?
Yeah, thank you for the question, and through you, Mr. Chair. I don't want to speak on behalf of other organizations or other groups, but I can tell you at the RCMP, we're continually looking at resources and where our resources are better placed. Currently, within our financial crime unit and our units, I would say we're adequately staffed where we need it. We're continually looking at how crimes are evolving. Today we might have an investigation, a big investigation in cryptocurrency. We might take some of our money laundering folks and augment that, person power, if you want to call it, and vice versa. So we're constantly evolving and looking at where we can better put our
si vous me
resources.
permettez de vous interrompre, plus
But if I may
succinctement,
interrupt, a little more succinctly, do you feel that in the complex financial world of today, do you think that the RCMP lacks financial resources to really fulfill its mission?
I think, if you're asking me, I think anytime we have more resources anywhere, I think having more resources in anything is more efficient. You can always do more with more, obviously, but I think we have the resources to adequately do what we're doing today. There's always evolving technologies. You had mentioned technologies. There's technologies that we're always looking at to enhance, cryptocurrency tracing, cryptocurrency wallets, et cetera. There's things that we're always looking at to try to enhance, because as you know, when the criminal gets ahead, we're a little, it's almost like a cat and mouse game that we're trying to always get there.
Thank you, Mr. Sagbini. That's the time.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Kelly for 5 minutes.
Chair, do you find that criminal organizations, the ones that you investigate, is it common for them to use tax havens to hide their gains and both to hide, I guess, their gains from the police, but also from law enforcement, but also to avoid taxes?
I mean, I can start, and then maybe Chad can jump in. Thank you for the question. I do believe, yes, they do use tax havens to hide and launder their money. They also, use the cryptocurrency exchanges as well. That's another piece. But yes, in short answer, yes, they do. I don't know if Chad, if you want to add anything to that.
That's good. That's the answer. Is a good answer or a complete answer. Which leads to my next question. The CRA told us a few weeks ago that they had only referred and had successfully seen through 14 prosecutions for offshore tax avoidance since 2000, so a little less than 3 per year. How many charges have you laid in relation to, let's even go the broadest category of files that you investigate? Like, how often are you laying charges for tax avoidance, or fraud, money laundering, all the things under your?
So there's a distinction there between the predicate offenses and the money laundering, and then just having your money in a tax haven. Having your money in a tax haven on its own, for us, that's a CRA mandate. It's not a crime, right?
I'm asking. So for these predicate offenses, which could be any of a number of things, how often is your department as the senior, so the national organization investigating?
We'd have to get you the statistics if that's what you're looking for. We don't have it on hand. And then I think the important thing to your question, too, if I may ask, is you were talking about prosecutions versus charges?
Yes.
Because that's two different things, right?
I understand, but charges are what you do. That's why I'm asking you about charges.
Exactly. So we can come back with that.
Okay.
We don't have that statistic on hand.
Okay. Let me ask about cooperation with the CRA. So you are investigating predicate offenses. You're leaving just simple people that are taking lawfully earned profits and not paying taxes on it. That's the CRA's issue. But you are dealing with in cases where the profits are not legally gained. Do you find that you have, in your cooperation, are you a net sender or recipient of information with the CRA? I presume you refer files to the CRA.
We do refer to the CRA. The CRA will refer something back to, let's say in an example of they're looking at a tax evasion, simply a tax evasion, and then they come across a criminality that comes with it, then they'll refer it to us. So it's a two-way street. We'll refer either way. And sometimes we would collaborate together. Sometimes we work independent of each other.
I got lots of questions and little time. I want to ask about financial institutions. How do you characterize the level of cooperation you get? And this goes back to, as Ms. Cabina also said, I have working history in the finance sector, and it always seemed that the banks were reluctant to share information about what goes on in their own shop in fraud cases. Do you find that you get cooperation from the banks? Is it getting better or worse?
So we have great cooperation with the banks. We're, the new IMLIP, the Integrated Money Laundering Intelligence Partnership, that was announced. We're working closely with the banks on information sharing. We're in the process of information sharing agreements with the banks to enhance our MLIPs.
You have agreements that are not executed yet, but you're working on them?
Yes, correct.
Okay. One last question. The former finance minister had, goes along with a question we had earlier about legislative steps. I think Mr. McDonald asked about that. So one of the former finance ministers had called for a review of the Proceeds of Crime, Money Laundering, and Terrorist Financing Act. It's overdue for review. It hasn't happened. It doesn't appear to be picked up by the government currently under the new minister. How important is that, and what would you like to see from that review?
Just a quick answer, please.
Yeah.
Reviewing of any legislation and keeping up to date is always important. And with that, any review in our world, information sharing is always a key factor to look at.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Turnbull for 5 minutes.
Thanks, Chair. Superintendent, I'll start with you. So you had mentioned in your opening remarks that some progress has been made with new laws and regulations. I wondered if you could comment on, I know the beneficial ownership registry is about to come into effect, will be operational by the end of 2025, which is this year, so that's coming very shortly. And you had started to say when you ran out of time, just how that was one of the things you could cite as helping with these very complex cases. Could you speak to how meaningful the beneficial ownership registry is for your investigations?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for the question. And through you, Mr. Chair, it allows us to start unraveling, if you want to call it, or unpeeling of the onion in trying to figure out who is actually running these companies as opposed to having it extremely layered. So just having that registry on its own might seem like a simple tool, but it's simple but strong in terms of allowing us to properly conduct our investigations.
Great. Similarly, I wondered if you could comment on whether I think there's been some additional federal resources dedicated to kind of going after the professional enablers they're referred to. You know, these are the lawyers, accountants, consultants, and others that help enable people to set up these complex structures that end up avoiding or evading taxes. Can you speak to whether there's been any progress on that front?
Do you want to take this one, Chad?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, we work with CRA specifically through our IMLET teams, our Integrated Money Laundering Investigative Teams. They're located across the country and in key areas. Their mandate is to investigate professional money launderers and enablers. They've been, I believe, about 5 years in existence, and we've seen a lot of success through those units. Collect R is a good example of a file out of one of those units, the one that Sir spoke about. Thank you.
Okay, great. So those are two useful, sounds like initiatives that are making some progress. How about the whole of government national anti-fraud strategy, which we announced, and the Financial Crimes Agency? Do you think that's going to aid you in being able to crack down on some of these complex financial crimes?
So I think with the Financial Crime Agency, I think it'll be a way for us to work hand in hand in terms of having potential expertise there, maybe more on the civilian expertise side that could assist in certain complex investigations. I think from a fraud perspective, I think there's a lot that can be done in terms of how many times do we get messages a day on our emails or text messages that are fraudulent. So I think maybe having kind of like a clearinghouse of sorts might be beneficial there to allow it to be looked at, because I'm sure some of the people behind it might be doing it not just doing one fraud, multiple frauds. So
Right.
it'll be allowing us to put it together.
Yeah, and I know we've also committed to hiring another 1,000 RCMP officers and increasing resources to federal prosecution service, which you had mentioned earlier. I'm assuming that those resources are going to help aid in your investigations as well. You had mentioned earlier that you felt you were fairly adequately resourced in your unit. But can you talk about how those additional resources will aid in cracking down on tax evasion?
What we've seen is out of the 1,000, there may be 150, I believe, coming to financial crime. So we're not sure yet where those resources were. Once we see where they're going to come to, we'll assess better where those resources would be going. So I think it's important for us to kind of look and take stock of where we need to augment ourselves.
And the Federal Prosecution Service, I assume that's going to help to prosecute some, I know the other members were
not to speak on their behalf, but I'm assuming, I would just, as an assuming person, saying that if you had more prosecutors, more would go through the courts. That's just an assumption, but
This is certainly why the government has made, I think, additional commitments. So that's great. Any additional clarity you can give us on any other progress that you had referenced in your opening remarks that you didn't get a chance to finish? I think you were going to refer to a number of other things, but maybe you could also take a second, go back.
Just a quick
I was
answer,
almost
please.
at the end, but there's been a lot of progresses in just our partnerships with our partners, internationally, our partners domestically, where we're working more collaboratively. Especially on cryptocurrencies, we hold a lot of training where we have municipal, provincial, international partners that come on these training, and that also builds on our network. So if someone from the OPP or SQ or someone that's come on our course, they can either reach back into us or reach back into someone that was on the course. So we're building these networks of financial crime experts.
Thank you. Colleagues, we have enough time for one more round, so I think that if you guys are all okay with it, we could do 3 minutes each party. Yeah? So I'll hand it over to the Conservatives for 3 minutes. Ms. Cabina.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we got caught off in the last conversation where we were talking about how do we hold these bad actors accountable? Because, of course, the concern is that, we don't have, you don't have the number of investigations or the number of charges. These bad actors may just get a slap on the wrist, or maybe they get charged and there's a fine, and that's the cost of doing business, because it is highly profitable to engage in financial crime and tax avoidance. So can you please speak to how do we hold these bad actors accountable?
So from a law enforcement perspective, all the complaints that we do receive, obviously we take them very, very seriously. We investigate them, to the capacity and to lay charges. In terms of what happens later, in terms of the court process, in terms of, sentencing, that's outside our scope. But what I can reassure you is when we do receive complaints, we are investigating them to the fullest capability, and we are charging. But again, what happens later, that's kind of out of our purview. But
if you could submit to the committee the statistics and the data, that'd be great, just to get a sense of the problem. But also, there has been an increase in financial crime. Can you speak to why do you think this is the case? Like, what's driving this increase?
I think part of it, and Chad, you can jump in as well, but I think part of it too is, everything's electronic. Everything's electronic now. Most people are banking electronically. Most people are on their phones, emails. It's easy. You're more easily susceptible to being defrauded just by the mere amount of data and electronics that we use on a daily basis. We've got elderly now that might not necessarily know how to use these technologies. There's AI, there's the deep fakes. We can talk about this for half a day on how much how you can be defrauded. I think it's just because of the technologies today and how they're easily accessible.
Thank you for
or
that.
Exploitable. Sorry.
Yeah. And based on your experience, what are the weaknesses in Canada's corporate financial and reporting systems that are most commonly exploited by individuals or corporations using offshore tax havens or financial crime?
A quick answer, please.
Yeah. Do you want to take that one?
Quick answer would be, beneficial ownership and transparency in trusts.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Sawatsky for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Could you speak a bit more about the increase in AI deepfake scams, and what are some of the most common methods used?
So thank you for the question. Through you, Chair, some of the stuff we've seen is the AI deepfakes, where it's voice recognition, where your bank, let's say, has a voice recognition feature, and someone has your voice and uses that to authenticate. We've seen where emails come through to a company saying, hey, I'm so-and-so CEO, can you please forward $50,000 to this company where, they just did they did ABC for us. So the technology of AI in terms of like the deep fakes and the facial and the voice is what we've seen now. I don't know how that's going to morph. It might morph into something more complicated or more sophisticated, but that's what we're seeing on the surface right now.
Thank you. And when it comes to text message scams, I know a lot of people get, in fact, during this conversation, I got a text message scam of we are hiring. So where are these coming from, and how can we start trying to stop these text messages from coming in?
So it's a great question. We do have we are working with some of our telcos to say, how is this happening? How are the numbers being spoofed? Obviously, the number you received it from, if you call that number back, it'll be some person that just answers and hello, and you're like, hey, did you just call me? No, it wasn't me. So obviously their numbers are being spoofed. So we're trying to figure out through our telcos. We think a lot of it's coming from overseas. Some might be domestic, but we're trying to figure that out with the partnership with our telcos.
And can somebody who takes part in this scam, can they be charged?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. We'd have to investigate to see, what came of it. Like maybe this person is really hiring, right? And they got your resume versus, hey, click on this. It's going to take you to a site. We need to get into your computer because, you have a virus, and the next thing you know, they have access to everything. So everything it would be unique to each situation.
And so would you need to have been scammed in order for them to get charged, or could they be charged just by sending something in hopes of scamming?
Yeah, we'd have to look at it. We'd have to delve into how. I mean, spoofing a number on its own. We'd have to, that's something we'd look at as an offense. Spoofing people's numbers and spamming and et cetera. So, yeah, and it's happening so often that the prioritization of these scams, like it's important to be able to protect our most vulnerable.
Thank you. It's time. Next, we have Mr. Garon for 3 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're talking a lot about crypto and big international matters. It's certainly the current style. Also, telephone fraud, scams targeting elders, and so on. There is the Canadian Bankers Association, working with the RCMP and other organizations as well, have started a publicity campaign to raise awareness, telephone operators and internet companies and so on, to ensure that everyone is on the same page, working to ensure that frauds don't happen. I favor that. It's a good initiative. I even supported an event here on the Hill to raise awareness about this, but I don't think that we are rendering the banks as responsible as they should be. You say that all players have to play their part. When an elder has 3 times loses $500 in the middle of a Saturday evening, and the banks say, well, this happened to an entrepreneur in my riding. She had funds taken from her bank over and beyond the bank's maximum withdrawal levels, and she was actually accused by the bank itself. It looks to me that banks need to bear more responsibility, and if they were in part responsible for the financial losses, then they would ensure that prevention is tougher. Could that be an element that could eventually reduce the numbers of frauds, making banks more responsible for them? Because, it's from the bank account that the money's being taken out, after all.
Totally understand, and in these cases, it's very important that it gets reported to the police of jurisdiction, whatever area your constituent or whoever gets defrauded, because it becomes very important that they will start an investigation with the bank, in collaboration with the bank, to see what exactly happened. It's always favorable to have the police response
Mais au-delà de ça, la question, je suis d'accord avec
Right,
vous.
but
en
over
disant-
and beyond that, and I fully agree with what you've just said, though, if banks do, under legislation or regulations, were made responsible for what's going on in people's bank accounts, as is the case in the UK, don't you think the banks would set in more measures to ensure that these frauds wouldn't occur, or at least wouldn't occur as often? And we wouldn't need to turn to the police because, of course, ideally in life, we like police officers, but we'd rather not have to deal with them.
Yeah, I mean, for legislative questions, I'll leave that to the experts here at Parliament to decide how that would come out. From a law enforcement perspective, like I said, I highly recommend a police presence in those calls, and we could work with the bank. But legislative, I'll leave it to the legislative experts.
Thank you. That's the time for today. I want to thank the witnesses for being here. Is it the will of the room to adjourn the meeting? All right.